Hey guys, what's going on today? I'm going to be talking about file permissions in Linux and what they mean. In this example, I'm just going to be running ls-l on the command line. So the file permissions, when viewing them through a command line, are represented in this 10-column array here, which I'm going to highlight to make it easier to view. I'm going to be explaining what each of these columns mean and what these letters and symbols mean right now. The first column is going to be reserved for the type of file it is. Dash would just be your normal file. D would be a directory, and L would be a link. So I'll be discussing file links later in the video, somewhere towards the end. But the next three columns are going to be reserved for permissions of the owner of the file, obviously the person who created it. And in this case, the owner of the file has read and write permissions. The next three columns are to represent the permissions of the group that owns the file, in this case, the users group, where they only have the permission to read. And then the next three columns are to represent the permissions of all other users or all other entities on the system that may have access to the file where they can only read it. So I'm going to show you how you can change file permissions in this case with this sample script that I have prepared for this video. So I'm going to be giving the owner of the file permission level 7 and everybody else permission level 5. And I'm going to be explaining permission levels after I run this command here. And I'm going to just filter the output by shell scripts. So basically there's 8 different permission levels in Linux. Permission level 0, which is represented by a dash, which means no permissions, no access to the file is permitted. 1, which is going to be only the permission to execute. 2 is only the permission to write the file. And then 3 is going to be write and execute. 4 is going to be read. 5 is going to be read and execute. 6 is read and write, and then 7 is read, write, and execute. As you see right here, the owner of the file can read, write, and execute, while everybody else can only read and execute. Now, the reason why you would want to change file permissions can vary from you want to make your program executable, your shell script executable, or you just don't want anybody else to edit the file or have access to it for whatever reason you may have. In this case, I'm going to be executing the shell script that I've prepared for this video. All it's going to do is print the distribution information to the console. As you see, I have Arch Linux running in this VM here. But the reason why you wouldn't want to give everybody permission level 7 is very simple, especially when you're talking about programs. Say you're not the best programmer or your code isn't very clear. You don't want people just jumping into the code, changing things up, and breaking the program, and you have no idea what happened, and they kind of just give an error on your GitHub project, and they don't really explain what they did, because why would they? Then you go ahead and test the code, and it just works. So, anyways, programming frustration aside, I'm going to be creating a blank file here, just calling it new, and I'm going to be changing the permissions through chmod for everyone only to have the read permission. So now if I do that, if I run ls-l, we can see the new file, which is over here where my cursor is. Everybody only has the permission to read it. Now, obviously, there are workarounds to where you can edit the file, which I'm going to be showing off now. Don't do this if it's, an OS-sensitive file, basically something like your file system table, or just generally things you shouldn't be messing around with that being in the device directories or any of the root directory folders that is not your home folder. Unless you know what you're doing, don't go messing around with those lower level folders. But I'm going to be opening the new file I created in Vim. I'm going to go ahead and insert some text to it. I'm just going to say this is a test. Now, if I go ahead and try to save this, it's going to give me an error, and it's going to tell me that this is a read-only file, but there is a way to override that by, at the end of the write command, adding an exclamation mark, and then I'm going to quit out of here. Now, if I cat the file, it's going to print out the text I just put in there. Now, if I change everybody's permission to 0, that means nobody has access to the file. Permission will be denied. So obviously do not do this on files that you really care about. I mean, it can be reversed, but there's really no point in doing this. This is just for the sake of this example. As you see, I cannot cat the file because I do not have the permission to read it. But if I go ahead and change everybody's permission level to 4 for this file, if I try to cat it, it will go ahead and print out the contents of the file. Now I'm going to go ahead and just change this back to 644, and we're going to move on to the subject of linked files. I'm going to tell you how to link a file, link two files together. This is just going to be a very basic way of doing it. There's other ways that are a little bit more complex than I'm going to be showing you, but I'm just going to create two empty files, call them 1 and 2. And then the way you would link a file in Linux is by running the ln command and giving it the arguments -sf, and then you would give the two file names. And then if we go ahead and run ls-l, we see here that the linked file, in fact, does have the first column identifier, representing that it is linked, and then the permissions are level 7 across the board, which means read, write, and execute. Now, I don't know if there's a way you could change the permissions of a linked file. I'm sure there is. I'm just not sure on how to do it at the current moment, but for those of you who were wondering what these characters here mean when you run ls, those are your file permissions. And if you found this video informative, drop a like, subscribe, or leave a comment if you have any video suggestions for topics you want me to cover in the future. I'm just going to remove these two linked files here. So with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching.